So, hello everyone. It's nice to be here in this weekly date or meeting with us, with Good Rebels. We always try to have a conversation with all of you about an interesting or relevant topic regarding the digital business industry. And in today's webinar, I'm going to introduce myself in a minute with more detail. I'm Daniel Diez, and I work here at Good Rebels. Today, we're going to talk about a specific project. I am really fond of it because it's about to rebuild the brand in this human-centered world, okay? It's about how we have helped one of our clients, which is Cost Converters, to rebuild the brand and to make the most of what it can deliver to the customers and to the society from their perspective, and also to help them to become more competitive in the business. So, as I said, I'm going to introduce myself. As I previously mentioned, I'm Daniel Diez. I've been working at Good Rebels for the last 6.5 years, approx. In the last 10 years, I've been working in the digital marketing and communication sector with lovely and amazing brands. Some of them, you can have the logos here in different sectors, in travel, retail, distribution, also consumer goods, etc. And you have my contact details there in case you need anything else from me from now on. But one of the things I love about being here at Good Rebels and being able to work with these brands is that precisely we can help these brands to change themselves. I think we are in a moment, and we'll go more in depth in a few minutes, we're in a moment in which brands are becoming more relevant than ever, or the need of them becoming relevant is bigger than in the last years, in my humble opinion. And that's why, as I said, in the last years, I've been working here at Good Rebels. In case you don't know us, here you have a brief information about us. We are a digital strategy and creative company. We are talking about digital strategy and we are talking about creative. And that's one of the things I think are more valuable about Good Rebels is this mixture of consultancy and agency that allows us to become part of different kinds of projects as a consultant or as agency. And in my opinion, that gives us a wider view of how brands and companies work and which are the needs that they have in these years of digital transformation, in these years of change, in these years of special competition in many sectors. As we say here, we try to work in the intersection of people, brands, and technology. Obviously, we put people first, and that has an intention. For us, working with people, putting people in the center, if it's a customer or a coworker or a citizen, is crucial for companies nowadays. It's not anymore about seeing ourselves as brands, but understanding the needs of the people and try to give them opportunities and engage with them. We work, 120 people here. We are in Spain, in the UK, and Mexico in 4 offices, and we have more than 60 lovely clients. So that's a brief overview of how we are, of who we are here at Good Rebels. The steps of today's webinars are these ones. We're going to start talking about the importance of brand. I've been saying a few things about it in this first minutes, but I would like to speak with you about which is the importance of brands nowadays. Then we're going to talk about which has been the positioning process with our client, with Cost Converters, which has been the path to gather all the relevant data about them, about the customers, about different stakeholders, and with that base, with that foundation, try to deliver the new positioning, brand rebuilding that help Cash Converters to be more relevant and more competitive, okay? And that's what we are going to see in the output. We cannot, unfortunately, say everything about the output of the project, but we'll give you a glimpse, a bit of what has become of this project, okay? And obviously, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to speak with you and answer them at the end of the webinar. Okay, these are the steps or the guidelines of this webinar. And to start with, would like to start again talking about the value of brands nowadays. And I like to see it in two different ways. One way about the brand value itself, I mean, the brand equity, the value that has a brand just for being a brand, not having into consideration other factors. And then another point of view is how brands now need to mean something in the mind of customers, okay? If we speak about equity itself, we have periodically every year different consultancies or firms like Interbrand in this case that give a value to the brands having into consideration different factors. Okay, here you have obviously really well-known brands that are relevant not only in terms of market cap, that they obviously are, but they are really valuable in terms of the value of the brand, the equity or the amount of money that we estimate that the brand is worth just for being a brand. Okay, for me it's really important to understand which are why these brands are really growing, and you can see here that this top growing, which is the number 3, that has increased more than 50% since the last year, which is Amazon. Amazon that was created more than 20 years ago. Now it's a huge, and it's a monster in a good way, because it's really having a really powerful brand, because it's becoming more relevant in the different retail sectors and having new lines of business like Amazon Web Service, etc., etc. So there's one point of view of the value of the brand, which is the money, to say something that they value as equity. But then we have this other part of the other part of the pie, to say something. Okay, this is a really interesting document about Edelman, who talked or went through the different stages that brands have been evolved in the last years. Okay, and what we saw in the last quarter of 2018 is that the biggest trend is that brands have to take a stand. Okay, and for me it's really important to highlight this, because as it said in this document, they're talking about the value of a brand that taking a stand because socially they try to stand for something. Okay, why is it really important nowadays? And we're going to see a couple of examples in 1 minute. We are living in such a competitive context in which there's lots of brands and lots of influencers, and there's so many impacts that we as customers, as people, receive every day, especially in the digital channels, that we have a limited share of attention. I mean, we have a few minutes throughout the day to be aware or to have in our mind the impacts that the brands deliver. And only if we are really relevant, we are going to be able, as brands, to be in the mind of the customers. That's what Milgram Brown talked about, being relevant in terms of socially and individually. Okay, and we have these brands that take a stand. We have seen really good examples of how brands really want to highlight the things they stand for, and we have a couple of examples here. I reckon these ones will be probably familiar for you. One is Nike, that I think at the end of 2018 did this campaign in the USA. It was about believing in something even if it means sacrificing everything. Nike chose one of the football players, the NFL players, who kneeled when the anthem of the USA was being played in one match, because he wanted to protest against racism in the USA. And Nike thought that act of kneeling was something that they wanted to highlight, not because the action of itself, but because this guy really believed in something, even if it means to sacrifice everything, as they say here in the claim. So Nike really wants to, connect their positioning with the act of this football player to say, well, we as Nike really try to believe in something, even if it has a cost. Okay, it obviously had really bad results in terms of image to some extent. There was a lot of people that were burning Nike clothes or trainers or whatever. But on the other hand, for marketing experts and brand experts, it was a bold move that was really aligned to the core values of Nike. Nike has always been like, has this challenger mind and really always wanted to stand for something. And for the experts, they really believe that it was a really good move in terms of moving forward and making a difference with the competitors. Okay. The other campaign is more recent. It's about Gillette. You probably have seen it. It really went one step ahead with its common claim. Okay, and they did this advertising piece about the best a man can get means something really different that they have been communicating for many years, and it has also been really controversial. That there has been a lot of critics behind it. You may like it or not, but the thing is that brands that take a stand here in these really big examples of big brands, really, they are doing that. Okay, they are really trying to stand for something, for some social specific action, and try to align the core values with these actions. Okay, so moving on. Sometimes, yeah, it's about standing for something, as we've said here, as we've seen here in these two campaigns. But sometimes it's about moving on, and that's the case that we are going to see now. Okay, it's not always about delivering a really big action or campaign, standing for something. Sometimes, as cash converters, it's about trying to change after 25 or 30 years in the business. Okay, and that's what we are going to talk about today. Cash Converters, in case you don't know it, it's a second-hand company. It was created in Australia in the 1980s, and it arrived in Spain about in the 1990s. Okay, they were the first company that started delivering the second-hand business here in Spain. They were leaders here for many years, leaders and almost the only more or less key players in the second-hand business. Okay. In the last years, they have been in a process of digital transformation. For example, even though much of the business still comes from the physical stores, some stores as the one you can see in the image, the online business created by the online shop has been growing throughout the years. And after last year's web page refurbishing, it's becoming even more relevant. Okay, but in the last years, they have seen that many other players here in Spain have become really more important. We're talking about Wallapop, about Miranuncios, about Vivo, really different companies. Some of them are pure players. They are new here. They are mobile applications, and they have done something great, which is harmful and also an opportunity for cash converters, which is making the second hand be mainstream, being cool. Here in Spain, in general, for many years, second-hand was not that popular. It was not something that we waved with pride, buying or selling second-hand products. Okay, what has happened in the last years? Some of these players have developed these specific campaigns and brand positionings in which, buying or selling second-hand products is something cool. It's something intelligent. I mean, if I don't use something, why shouldn't I sell it and get money for it? It's really related with the smart shopper. As I said, that's a risk for cash converters because there are other really big players, but they really had this opportunity of joining this new movement of the second-hand products and making the most of it. Okay, so that's the situation that has cash converters right now. And after talking a bit about the context of cash converters, here is where Good Rebels becomes also in the stage. Okay, the story or the history behind Good Rebels and cash converters, it begins 1 year and a half ago, more or less. We have started working in this brand and customer strategy, different kinds of projects and collaborations. In the last 7-8 months, we have been working in these two great areas of brand and customer, integrating the physical stores and the online channels. Okay, we have been working in projects in which we have to improve the communications effectiveness. We want to digitalize the physical stores to make them more attractive for the customers. We want to increase all the customer knowledge that can be generated in the stores. I mean, there's a lot of interactions of the customers in the stores, and all this information is really valuable for cash converters to integrate, analyze, and to deliver really good customer experience also in store. And also that means that we can improve the experience at every touch point. Okay, that's in the more physical part of the business. If we look about the online channels, well, we have lots of opportunities of automate as much as we can the conversion campaigns. We can improve the relationship with the customers using digital channels. And obviously, we have customers that buy products and customers that sell product, and we can generate, interactions on and information sharing between them. Okay, so in this context of collaboration between cash converters and Good Rebels, an opportunity came up. We have been talking, and we said that it's a really good opportunity to start working together in the brand repositioning project. Okay, we really wanted to rebuild the brand of cash converters because they said, well, these are our main challenges for 2018, 2019, and the following years. The first of those challenges is to become more customer-centric. Okay, we have a quote here of Sergio Pintado, which is the marketing director at Cash Converters, and they say one of the main challenges for them is one of the challenges that many brands and companies nowadays have to face, which is to put the customer at the center. Okay, as Sergio says here, it's a unique but ambitious goal because he has to align, they have to align more than 1,000 people working in the headquarters and also in the physical stores and also in the franchises, and make them work together to become more customer-centric. Okay, this is one of the main challenges for the next years. The other one is about identity. Okay, and it's really aligned with what I've been saying before about the competitors. Okay, the competitors of Cash Converters here in Spain, they are really good in terms of brand building. They are really, to some extent, relevant, and as pure players, they deliver really good user experience in the interaction with the digital channels, and that makes Cash Converters to become really more competitive in terms of identity and in terms of which is the value that we are going to deliver to the customers and how are we going to communicate all this value that we as a company are able to deliver to the customers. And this comes from a reflection that some of these second-hand other companies really only link the demand and the offer. I mean, but they don't. They are not in between. They don't give a special, service as a company. In the case of Cash Converters, there's an amazing service that they are delivering in terms of guarantee, in terms of having many products in the physical stores and the online stores. And one of the challenges was to, get all these advantages that Cash Converters can deliver and put those advantages in the new positioning and, communicate them in a really relevant way for the customers. This was a brief. Okay, I've been saying this for some minutes, but to define a new brand was a brief. New brand positioning based on data to give a new personality and drive all the communications. Okay, this based on data was one of the key issues that the top management at Cash Converters told us. It's like, we don't really want a new positioning that comes from our minds or the Good Rebels' minds, but what we really want to understand is what the main stakeholders really need. Okay, which are the needs, which are the images that the stakeholders have in mind about Cash Converters, understand them, and from that situation start delivering the new positioning. Okay. The approach of the project, having this brief of new positioning based on data, was these 4 stages that you see here. The first one is to understand how Cash Converters is actually nowadays communicating its core values, okay? That's what we understand as corporate identity communicated. The second stage is test how this shared identity is perceived by the key stakeholders of the company. Obviously, not everything we try to communicate has the same impact in the different stakeholders. We really wanted to understand if what we are saying about us, about Cash Converters, was being perceived the same way by the main stakeholders, okay? The next stage is to define which are the main customers or audiences that we want to acquire. Nowadays, as Cash Converters, we have a certain typology of customers, but we want to be broader. We want to reach to a wider audience and be relevant for other customers that nowadays probably are not buying us, or selling in our stores, but we want to conquer them, to say something, okay? And then deliver this brand positioning to drive all the actions of the brand, both internally and externally. And that's one of the more interesting topics. This is not about a brand positioning that only is being thrown away to the society or to the customers. This brand positioning had to be something to be applied in their own company, inside, in the processes, in everything they do, okay? These are like the 4 stages of the approach that we delivered. And the team that worked in this project was a mixture of digital strategy team, creative team, and really, of course, Cash Converters. I think one of the learnings that we're going to see at the end of this presentation is that working hand to hand with the client, with Cash Converters in this case, it really gives a lot of value to the positioning. It's really important to have these periodic touch points with them to understand if we are really going in the right direction in terms of brand positioning. And you know that when we talk about positioning, it has this kind of subjective overview, and being aligned both internally and with the agency, in this case, Good Rebels, it's crucial to have a really good result. This was the team, as we said. We really understood that a consultant part was really relevant to understand all the data that we wanted to gather, and then the creative team was really a really important part in order to put the magic in everything we try to do in this brand position. And this is the path. This is the strategic framework that we used both to analyze the data of the brand positioning that's being delivered and the positioning that's being perceived by the stakeholders, and also the milestones of how we are going to deliver or to build the new brand positioning. This is a traditional classic brand equity model by Kevin Lane Keller. But for me, it's really interesting to use it and to take it from a theoretical world and put it into practice, okay? In this brand equity model, Keller says that you are building a brand from the bottom of the pyramid to the top of it. In the bottom is the brand identity, is who you are as a brand, and that as an output has a salience. It's something that you are communicating when you say, who are you as a brand? That identity really begins to create a meaning, okay, in terms of performance and in terms of images. That's what that means is you as a brand and your products really deliver a performance that users have when they use the product, and also generates images in the minds of the customers. And those images come from the product itself, but also about what the brand delivers, what the brand offers. If we think of the top of the rank that was saw before about the more valuable brands, we have Apple, we have Amazon, we have Facebook, we have General Electric. All those brands by themselves mean something in the mind of a customer, and that generates images. And that images and that performance creates responses. okay, what the brand is, communicating and doing in everything, then the customer or the user has a response. They create judgments. I mean, I judge the brand or the product for everything they do, and then that generates feelings. In my emotional part, for me, a specific brand can generate specific feelings, okay? And in the top of the pyramid, to say something, the brand generates relationships with the customers. And those relationships come from all the work that has been done before. Comes from the identity of the brand, of the meaning of the brand for the customers, and the response that all the performance and the imagery generates in the minds of the people. Okay, this, as I said before, is a theoretical model, but for us, the interesting part was to take it into a specific and operational model, okay, as we're gonna see in the next minutes. I'm gonna start after this theoretical milestone that we used. I'm gonna talk about the analysis part, okay? In this analysis part, we've been working for several weeks, and we want you to understand, as I said before, which is the corporate identity communicated by the brand, how is it perceived by some of the main stakeholders in terms of the general audience. It doesn't matter if they're customers or not, general audience, the customers, then the co-workers, I mean, the people that really are working in cash converters in the shops, in the offices, and they also have an image of cash converters in the mind, and also the franchises, okay? Obviously, we really thought that it was interesting to differentiate the image of the franchises and the co-workers. Even though they work probably selling and buying products at cash converters, they could not have the same image or the same perception of the brand, and they could add more value with this double point of view. The perceptions of these main stakeholders generate a perceived positioning. If we gather all the relevant data of the image that the main stakeholders have, we will understand the perceived positioning, and from that foundation, we can start developing the new positioning. This is more or less the framework of the analysis part of this project. And the context is this one. I mean, it's an overview. Obviously, there is much more information if you go through the digital channels and the offline channels of cash converters, but we really wanted to understand which is the context and the evolution of cash converters as a brand. In terms of communication, some years ago, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, they were really bold in all the communications. As you can see in the left part of the screen, even if it's in Spanish, you can see here that the girl in the image is doing a specific gesture, right? That means that cash converters was really bold in terms of how they were, they were communicating. After this first stage of being bold in the communication, then they wanted to use the uniqueness as a lever to link the product and the people. I mean, you are unique and therefore you buy unique products in our shops, okay? But this wasn't a sufficient powerful positioning for cash converters, and that's why we wanted to build with them the next step, which was the key, the key outcome of this project. When we went through and analyzed everything that they've been communicated throughout the years, as you have seen in the previous slide, we needed to track a number of different, areas of knowledge about how they are communicating in everything they do, which is the focus of the communication, which is the approach of every campaign, which is the TOV, the tone of voice, the possible paths of positioning that they've been working in the last years and how have they worked, the performance of this previous positioning, how is the approach in terms of, engaging with the customer of both buying and selling. And this is something really relevant for you to understand and for us to work. We have to all the time think about not only selling products, but buying products. This double way of business of cash converters, it's crucial, and we could not only understand one part of it. We could not only go through how people are buying products here with us. It's crucial to understand the reasons and why people wanted to sell products in cash converters. Then following with this short list to say something, understand the product focus in terms of communication, which is the approach to drive sales to the physical stores and also to the online store, which are the rational incentives in terms of offers, campaigns, etc. that they used, and how emotional marketing is used to generate this positive brand awareness and associations, okay? As you can see here, these are like really different topics that we've been going through in the Keller pyramid. We went through the rational and the emotional facts that Cash Converters was communicating throughout the years. These are the main sources that we've analyzed to understand this communicated positioning. We have all the content that they have published in different media, the customer service that they are delivering, internal reports about, you know, brand strategy and so on, the social media strategic documents. At the end of the day, social media are one of the main channels that all the brands have to promote and to deliver content, and therefore there's a lot of information regarding the communication focus on the social media strategic docs and also in the reports, and the other own media channels that they have used both online, offline, and here we also analyzed what they were communicating in the physical stores, okay? And what did we detect, okay? Which were the three great things that they were trying to communicate once and again throughout the years, which were the issues that we understood that were repeating themselves all the time. One of them is that all the communications were pushing to stock, price, and guarantee. I mean, you have all these kind of products, it's a really good price, and also it has a guarantee, which is something that makes different Cash Converters from other second-hand competitors, their guarantee. Then we have a tone of humor in many of the communications. You saw before this boldness in the way that they were communicating, but the humor is always there, some way or another. There's always a kind of a sense of humor in the way that they communicate and in the way that Cash Converters was interacting with the users. And then there was a huge amount of campaigns once and again. Obviously, there was a lot of product and a lot of humor, but always or almost always aligned with specific campaigns. I mean, specific campaigns for the Day of the Father, for Christmas, for the summer season. I mean, this commercial calendar was driving all the communications at Cash Converters throughout the years. These were some of the key issues that we detect when we analyzed all the communications throughout the years. One of the other things that we thought they were interesting to understand, obviously, is, okay, we are looking to ourselves, but we need to look to our competitors, okay? These are some of them, of the second-hand competitors here in Spain. And having looked at Cash Converters, how are our competitors being positioned in terms of these two axes? One is focusing in product itself or building brand, or are they being rational or emotional? After reviewing many of the communications throughout some months, we could see that this was like the communication matrix in terms of product, brand, rational, emotional of the competitors. And therefore, we saw that there was a way of moving forward in this brand rational stage of the quadrant, okay? There was like a blue ocean in that side of the matrix. And in order to understand also the perceived positioning, not only what we were communicating, but what people understood about what we said and do in the different communications, we worked with this matrix that comes from the Keller's pyramid. As you can see here, in terms of salient brand associations and positive reactions, we could analyze different areas of knowledge to understand how is the brand being perceived by the key stakeholders. In the bottom of the pyramid, to say something, it's about understanding the brand perception, understanding the impact of the brand, if we are being in the top of mind of the users in terms of share of voice, in terms of how many times cash converters was being highlighted or mentioned in the social and digital communications. Then we could understand in terms of rational and emotional part, the associations of the brand experience, which are the satisfaction reasons, which are the reasons to choose cash converters versus the competitors, which was the service experience in the different channels. These were some of the issues that we really wanted to understand in all the part of the analysis and what we really wanted to gather in terms of data and information. All this could not be done without the research techniques. Here you have an overview of the research techniques that we had in mind when we started the project, and we have highlighted the ones that we used here, and we're going to talk about them a bit more in the next minutes. We mainly wanted to do surveys, wanted to do interviews to the main stakeholders. We used social listening to understand also which are the conversations about the brand in the digital and social channels. And we also activated like a monitoring in the reviews that people were putting at Google, okay? This was a really interesting part, the reviews of Google and what people were talking about cash converters when they visited a physical store. All in all, we analyzed like 11,000 conversations and reviews and analyzed which were the branches or the shops that had a better performance in terms of rating. You know, you can rate them between 1 star and 5 star, and it was really interesting to understand which were the shops that had the best and the worst performance in terms of rating, okay? But all in all, these are the techniques that we used to gather the information of each target, okay? Why did we choose these techniques? First of all, because it was really agile to implement them, to put them in motion, to activate those listenings on those interviews or surveys, and it was really easy to gather the information. Obviously, the panels and the focus groups always help, but in this case, we really wanted to move really fast, and that's why we chose specific techniques to understand the information about these 4 broad targets: the general audience, the customers, the co-workers, and the franchises. And the outcome of all of it is standardized data about identity, meaning, and response. Identity, meaning, and response are the 3 large areas that we saw before at the Keller pyramid, if you remember, okay? This is like the framework of analysis. And then we started, activating these analysis techniques to understand specific issues of each one of the main stakeholders. Beginning with the general audience, what we wanted to understand mainly via social listening, as you could see here, and also analyzing the reviews of the users. Well, the brand perception in general, what are they talking about cash converters? The reasons why they are or not buying in cash converters, or the reasons why they are buying or selling in other stores. And that's information that we could gather analyzing the digital conversations in reviews and in social networks. The next part, and this is obviously crucial, is why do customers buy or sell at cash converters, which are the best products or the ones that are really important for them, which are the services that cash converters is delivering and that really give a really good performance in terms of brand, and the reasons why they buy or sell in cash converters, and also what can be improved. A lot of customers that are buying at cash converters, both online and on physical stores, they have reasons to buy. And we really wanted to understand which were those reasons and decide if we wanted to use them to deliver this new brand positioning. Then, obviously, co-workers and franchises, as we said before, these people that are constantly interacting, buying and selling products with the users, they have a lot of experience and know a lot about the brand and know a lot about what the customer need and what does cash converters offer and what has to offer that is not doing right now. That's why we wanted to understand the service offered, which were the key advantages of cash converters from the co-worker's point of view, the strengths and also the weaknesses, the areas of improve, which were the reasons why, in their mind, the customers were choosing cash converters, and as we said before, how can we improve? Which are these specific issues that they, as salesmen or people that are in constant contact with the people, which are the areas that we can be improved as a brand. And in terms of the franchises, also, we wanted to understand the point of view about the business strategy of cash converters, if they find it really useful. Also, if the communications that cash converters was delivering, both online or offline, are really powerful and useful for them. We wanted to understand a bit more about how they perceive the corporate culture, and also how they perceive the kind of customers, and if the customers have different needs when they are buying products and when they are selling products. That obviously they have different needs, and we needed to create a brand positioning that gives an umbrella to both buying and selling services. These were like the main issues that we analyzed through all these surveys, interviews, reviews, and social listening throughout, about 6 weeks of analysis. And this is an overview of the key issues that were working good, and then we see the areas of improvement. What we understood analyzing all the data that was working good in the mind of these main stakeholders. Well, first of all, cash converters is adaptable to fulfill the customer needs, and that's something related to the corporate culture, but also related to how people, the co-workers, work at cash converters. They have this customer focus. They want to really adapt to the customer needs. There's also a feeling of having value for money. You have good quality and you have a reasonable price. That was something that was highlighted as a good thing, but you'll see afterwards that that's something that needs to be improved to some extent in the mind of a customer. Then obviously, as we mentioned before, the guarantee that cash converters deliver to the products is it's also one of the key issues and levers that help the users to choose cash converters instead of one of the competitors. Really related to the first one, the closeness and the empathy, mainly delivered by the people that work at cash converters, but also in general, the closeness and empathy that the brand delivers in general. Also, it has a clear association with both lines of business, about the line of business of buying products and the line of business of selling products. And also, and it's linked with the previous one of guarantee, it's security. You know that if you buy and sell something at cash converters, you feel safe because there's a guarantee and there's a company behind that transaction, which in the second-hand sector is really relevant in the moment of making a decision. But what was needed to be improved, to say something? Well, especially when we spoke with some stakeholders, we understood that we could be more, we could have a move forward in terms of communication, tone of voice. The humor is great. It's a really good level of communication, but it was interesting to define new ways of communicating rather than just humor. That also affects to the consistency among the physical stores. Remember that we are working here with own stores and with franchises, and that can generate different ways of communicating in the franchises and in the own stores. Then you saw before that the price, the value for money was one of the issues that were highlighted as positive, but also if we compare that prices with the competitors, with the second-hand competitors, it's more expensive, or you can get less money when you sell a product, because obviously there's a brand behind. It's not peer-to-peer. There's a company behind it giving security to all the transactions, and obviously that has a cost in the price. And then there was a need of being more agile in all the processes, in all the internal processes and in everything, and all the campaigns that had to be put in motion. Okay, these were some of the things that we understood that were needed to be improved. And with all this information, obviously there's a lot of information on charts and numbers behind it. You have here some highlights, but with all this data, then we started to define the brand positioning. And we are going to try to give you the most amount of information available. Okay, we start here with these 3 sentences or these 3 quotes of analyse that were, you know, the ones that we took when we started with this definition process. Okay, it's about not just to create something in the people's mind, but to take something that it's already in the mind and put it in motion. It's about using one specific concept as a lever and about being consistent. And these 3, areas were really relevant for us in order to start defining everything. Here you have like the first part of the definition process. What we did is to define 3 specific or 3 different paths of positioning and give them, and give them values in terms of 2 great axes. One is it relevant in physical and in online stores? And is it relevant for the buyer and the seller? So we took these 3 paths of positioning, and gave them some numbers, some ranks. And as you can see here in the chart, one of them, which we cannot say yet which one is it, but one of them was the clear winner, was really relevant for the physical store, was really relevant for the seller, also for the online store, and had a good performance for the buyer point of view. So that's why one of the 3 paths was the chosen one, using the data to move forward. Okay. Then, as we said before, we wanted to be relevant not only for the current customers, but also for other customers. For example, the customers of competitors, people that nowadays don't buy or sell cash converters. We wanted to engage with them to some extent. Also, to people that don't use secondhand, even though secondhand is becoming mainstream and cooler than it was before, a lot of people don't buy and sell on secondhand. And we wanted to find a way to engage with them. And then the current customers of secondhand and really heavy users of secondhand. Okay, these 3 large audiences were the ones we wanted to tackle via the new positioning. And for us, the key was not to align to the specific issues about needs, about age, about living in the city or in the outskirts or whatever. For us, the key issue was to tackle via the attitudes. Okay, it doesn't matter if you don't buy or sell in secondhand, if you are a current user of cash converters, or if you're not. In some moments, you'll have a specific attitude that cash converters will be able to be there and be relevant and give you help. Okay, and that's why we started working in this attitude model that it's transversal to all the audiences and not only with the specific issues of each one of the customers. The output, as we said before, we cannot give all the information, but for us, cash converters gives no risks, gives no worries, no delays, no problems. That's the key advantage that the company gives in the second hand. And therefore, what we decided is to create a brand positioning based on one specific attitude that it's directly translated from Spanish, but I hope you will understand it, which is the uncomplicating. That means to simplify everything. When you are, it doesn't matter if you are not a second-hand buyer or seller. In some moment, you might need something, you might need money, or you might need to buy a product. And if you don't want problems, you want everything to be smooth and to be simple, cash converters will be there because everything is faster, because you have the guarantee, you have a person in the physical store that will help you to find the product you need. And that was something that we understood that was the factor that make different cash converters with the competitors, and that really matched with the attitudes of the users and of the customers. And the output of all of these, new positioning based on the simplifying and make things not complicated was, first of all, a new claim from the company, okay, that will guide everything they do internally and externally, as we said before. Then we have a brand manifesto with these key issues, like the 10 points that really make different cash converters and that the brand has to follow in everything they do. Then a new tone of voice, also in the, in the way of communicating, not leaving behind this humorous tone, but to move one step ahead. Then a new design style, also really aligned with this simplifying mindset. After that, obviously, brand guidelines that will guide or that will drive all the communications, and then an implementation plan to activate this positioning everywhere. I mean, in the internal, external communications, in the marketing actions, in the commercial communications, in the internal operations, in the processes, everything has to be aligned with this new mindset and with this new positioning, okay? And you can see here that this being uncomplicated, it's already in the offices. I mean, they believe so much in what we've been working together that they put it there for them to see it, and in the moment of making any kind of decision internally, they will say, hey, let's do it in the simple way. Which are the next steps? Once we have finished this work of analysis, of definition, well, now it's time to connect this positioning with all the services. Cash Converters doesn't only have this buy and sell service, they have more services. And now it's time to see how we match this positioning in the different services. Afterwards, we will communicate it broadly. It's not broad so far. You are having a glimpse or an overview of the new positioning, but it's not being communicated broadly. And then we want to take this simplifying idea to the different touch points of the customer journey. This is like the next step that we have ahead in the upcoming months. Some of the learnings of this project is, obviously, analysis always takes longer than expected. It's really difficult to say, okay, we're going to be 4 weeks analyzing. It always takes a bit longer, and we have to be ready for that. What we said before, the constant communications flow with the customer, with the client, with Cash Converters is crucial to be focused and to have success in the positioning. Then the 80-20 still works. I mean, in the 20% of the time, at the end of the day, you have the 80% of all the results of all the things that you can define in terms of positioning. The lines of business, to be relevant in the brand positioning to all the lines of business, as we said before, is crucial. None of the line of business can be left behind. All of them have to be able to be integrated in this umbrella. Then to listen to the employees, it's very important for us. The people that are currently working in a company really have a good view and a good approach of what a company is and what does a company need. And last is, if it's not aligned with the brand core meaning, it doesn't work. That means let's not overpromise. We cannot define a brand positioning that it's not really linked with the DNA of the company. And this is the last key learning that I can share, or I wanted to share with you in this webinar. And it's been great to speak with you and to tell you this story of love between Cash Converters and Good Rebels. And obviously, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to hear them. Yeah, I have one here, which is, what was the biggest barrier between agency and client in this whole process, and how did we manage it? Okay, I think the biggest barrier is related with what I said before of the analysis part. Okay, to being able to define all the surveys, define all the interviews, determine which co-workers, which franchises are we going to survey or to question. That's a process that always takes longer. And even though we really worked close together in a really good vibe between Good Rebels and Cash Converters, this part of understanding what we want to know in the analysis part and how are we going to ask, it's always, it takes longer than expected. And therefore, the project took a bit more time than expected because of this initial analysis part. That was the main barrier. And how did we manage? Well, in some point, we had to say, okay, let's stop analyzing, let's gather all the data that we have, and let's work with it, because we could keep on analyzing and gathering data for a long time, but it would necessarily add more value to the definition part. That would be, you know, like the learning of this barrier and how to tackle it. Okay, the data. We had all the data, as you could see before, from those analysis source. Some of this data is not structured, obviously, but some of it was structured. We try to especially do a lot of surveys and interviews, and that was a way of having really good structured data, because we were questioning specific issues that you could see in the pyramid before, that are related with brand meaning, brand associations, brand responses, etc. That's the main sources of information. Obviously, reviews is a really good source, but for us, interviews and surveys really gave us a very good image of the needs of cash converters and how is it relevant for the customers. Okay, so I have a question here. When working with panel groups, what's the recommended size of the sample? Okay, to have a good representation to work with it. Well, that's a very good question. We, in terms of co-workers, we did like 150 to 200 interviews approximately. Okay, but obviously that we have like it's easier to try to gather all the responses from the co-workers, because you can have different points of touch or different ways of interacting with them. Okay, so yeah, in this case, I reckon, and I try to remember that it was like 150 to 200 responses and interviews and surveys from the customers, more or less. And what was the main problem of the brand discover during the analysis? Well, the part of analyzing the way that cash converters has been communicating throughout the years, it's a huge, I mean, that's quite a lot of information and quite a lot of things that we need to analyze. As you said before, the communications focus, how they try to send more, to sell the products, the triggers that they use to buy and sell. I mean, for us, in terms of brand discover, the key challenge was to not try to analyze everything that has been published and to pick samples of the different sources. I mean, of the own media, the strategic plans, the ways they are delivering the customer service, to not dying having too many data to analyze and not being able to finish the analysis part in the time that we had, more or less. That was like the main problem, the big amount of information that you have to structure somehow, because obviously you have to understand if they are working in a rational part and an emotional part, what kinds of brand values they were communicating, and that's something that you have to do manually to some extent. So, I don't know if you have any other question over here. Well, thank you so much, everybody. It's been a pleasure being here and sharing with you this experience. We'll share with you the deck in the next hours. And if you have any other question, obviously you have my contact details in the cover. And I would like to invite you to the next webinar, which will take place the 24th of April, if I'm not wrong. So we'll be here sharing with you ideas and thoughts about the digital landscape. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.